the big question here, because the deck lists are pretty darn similar, as I think everybody can see right now.
That's right. Who's going to get a Winota down first, right? Like, that's really the name of the game. Get some triggers going, and the whole point of the card is that it snowballs out of control. And if you can be the first one to do so, you are going to be in good shape. Now, the first one to do so, as we head into the match here, was Sebastián Pozzo, who picked up the first game and is looking to close out strong here. Both of these players, once again, just above the fold. They're both at 4-3 and very much keeping themselves in contention here in the Rivals Gauntlet.
You see that in the sideboarded games, Red Cat Melee becomes a very important card for killing Winota, right? But naturally, you're not always going to draw Winota. So it does have other things that it can do in the matchup, because it is just kind of a clean removal spell. Yes, you have to sacrifice a land in some instances, but it's a very important card in the matchup. But in the non-Winota games, cards like Asika's Chariot, very good. Bone Crusher Giant, very valuable in matchups like this. So, there's this weird kind of back and forth between the players insofar as Winota's at the top of mind for both players because it can win the game all by itself and oftentimes does in the matchup, but you do have to worry about other things.
Don't even say Ranger class around me either.
Oh,
Not
God.
today.
Love that card.
Look at it, sitting right there for Sebastian. And it looks like both players are going to kick things off with 6-card opening hands. Christian has Fabled Passage. Whew. There's a Winota off the top of the library there for Sebastian. First things first, though, Jaspera Sentinel's going to hit the battlefield. And there's a nice little target for Stomp. Curious if we see Ranger class hit, though, for the mana-making ability.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to kill the Innkeeper? Probably not that big of a deal. Yeah, and it looks like Ranger class is going to come down. That's going to make a 2/2 Wolf token and pass a turn back. But this means that, well, I should say attack and then pass turn back, but this means that an untapped land could produce a Winota here next turn.
Well, there's your red source. Not that the treasure couldn't do that itself, but
yeah, Christian could just slam Winota here and even get an attack in technically. Let's see. We were talking about trying to be the first person to get a Winota onto the battlefield, and Christian's not going to be the one, at least not yet. It's Selfless Savior on the battlefield for Hauck, and now we're going to see Bone Crusher Giant stomp down the Sentinel, leaving just the Wolf. And another Winota off the top of the library, certainly not what Sebastian wanted to see. Wow. Think about the turnaround there. He went from being like, I could top deck a land and play Winota, to now even a top deck land wouldn't have done it. And instead he drew a second copy of Winota. Just a disaster.
Yeah, the matchup can be really, really swingy. Not to mention that you're a 3-color deck, so sometimes your lands aren't even going to line up correctly. So I think we're both kind of working under the assumption, right, that, oh yeah, you just draw a third land, it'll be a white source, so you can start casting your elite spellbinders. There's no guarantee of that.
Interestingly, Pozzo decides to use Stomp on the Innkeeper. Christian says, okay. He gets to keep Selfless Savior around. Mm-hmm. And that could be relevant here. It's a tough one because if you do target the Selfless Savior, you send your Bone Crusher Giant on a permanent adventure, as it were.
Yep.
There it is. Prosperous Innkeeper is replaced now by Christian Hauck as he plays it, but still not the real heavy hitters aren't coming in yet. And even Bone Crusher Giant, which is a nice one, still isn't one of those GG type cards.
No, there is a third land. It's a white source. Now here's Elite Spellbinder.
Yeah, this is huge. And the only card left was an opposing Elite Spellbinder, it looked like. So that one's going to get delayed. 1, 2, 3. Well, maybe not. It could just come down here.
Yeah, if you want to, you can pay the 5 for it. Looks like we're going to see that be done.
That is exactly it. And Christian's going to take a look at an opposing Elite Spellbinder and a pair of Winota.
And you're not surprised here if you're Hauck, right? Because Pozzo's been missing land drops, so his hand is all spells. He top decked a land last turn, so now it's okay. How bad is it for me? And it's an Elite Spellbinder and 2 Winotas. The Winotas are not at their best at this exact moment, but as we all know, if you played the standard format or watched it some, it spirals out of control if it's on the battlefield for most of the time 1 turn, but certainly for 2.
Kind of a forced play here to take the Elite Spellbinder, as taking a Winota doesn't really get you anywhere because one of them will still be castable on 4 anyway.
Yep.
And it does put the Elite Spellbinder kind of out of range for a while. That's not just 1 mana source. That's 2 mana sources away now. But Christian definitely has to worry about this Winota coming down. Wow, another 4-drop.
I mean, the nice thing, right, is that you have a Bone Crusher Giant on an adventure, so that's kind of in the holster to cast. You're far away from that Elite Spellbinder, but in the interim, you've got a 4/3 that can trade with the opposing 4/3, and then if you do draw a 4th land that enters the battlefield untapped, all right, you've got Winotas and Chariots. So for Pozzo, things really aren't that bad. Now, my tenor for the game changes, Marshall, as soon as Winota shows up for Christian Hauck, but it hasn't yet.
That's right. And that's also why you saw no attack there from Pozzo. Doesn't want to trade off Elite Spellbinders in the air. Really trying to be patient and wait for these 4-drops to come online. Boy, this is where you're going. Land. Just please hit a land, says Pozzo. There it is. Fabled Passage off the top of the library.
So do
you set up for the mega big turn of Chariot into Winota? Or do you just play Winota and get in?
You're asking me. I'm asking you. I think you just play Chariot.
Okay.
I think you just continue to lock up the ground. If you're if you're Pozzo, you're basically saying, Christian, you have a turn to draw Winota.
Right.
You don't draw Winota this turn.
Next turn, Winota is just completely devastating for Hauck.
Yep. Now, of course, Hauck does have 2 cards in hand, so one of them could be something like Red Cat Melee to take care of the first Winota. But this is basically what Pozzo is announcing, which is I am setting up to just demolish you with Winota triggers next turn. So you better be ready, or you better find your own Winota to demolish me with triggers.
And he gets to run that next turn and the turn after if one of those cards is like a Red Cat Melee, like you mentioned. So kind of check, right? This is like, hey, Christian, you are going to have a very difficult time. And he just seems to be drawing the lower end of his deck here. Now he has triple Selfless Savior to go with the Innkeeper, the Bone Crusher, and the Elite Spellbinder. But here we go. Winota on the battlefield here. So the first thing is to find out if Christian has an answer for this one, and he really needs to. In the meantime, by the way, the Chariot can get crewed up.
Yep,
there we go. So there's a Red Cat Melee. So that means that Christian Hauck is at least still in this thing. And we're just going to see this Chariot get in there, right?
Yeah, I'm curious. Because I guess if you do this, okay, so you do this, and basically Chariot's going to trade with a Selfless Savior, and Elite Spellbinder might trade with a Selfless Savior. Yeah, but I'm kind of digging just holding back Chariot, because your next turn, if you're Pozzo, is going to be the exact same thing, right? Which is you're going to play Winota, you're going to use Winota to queue up the Chariot. Chariot's going to give you a Winota trigger. So there's no real reason to me to throw this Chariot into the garbage. Now, if you want to throw Spellbinder into the garbage because it's a human, fine. That's fine.
I agree. And by the way, I like, that Pozzo, he kind of had it in his mind that he was going to attack, and then he's like, maybe I'll hold back, actually.
Yeah. Just chilling.
Okay, so one of these Selfless Saviors finally going to make itself useful. Unfortunately, that cost it its life, but so goes it on the battlefield of Magic. And there's an Asika's Chariot. Fine. Pozzo says that's fine, because things are going to get really ugly here unless he gets very unlucky with these Winota hits. It does get kind of interesting because of the 2 Selfless Saviors, and that, if Pozzo doesn't hit big, we could see some amount of boards going away, but let's see what happens here.
I like to make sure the tapping is done that way. Make sure you leave up a red mana in case you hit Kenrith for the trample plus haste. So
Absolutely. So
okay,
here it is.
let's cue it up and
Winota.
spin the wheels. Like yes, yes, Pozzo has, or excuse me, Hauck has done a nice job of like gumming up the battlefield or whatever. But if Kenrith and Blade Historians show up, this one's over.
Look at this. 5 triggers, and here we go. Oh, the first one's a complete miss. Oh, and the second one kind of is too.
Okay.
A little bit of an up. Oh no, another Winota. What is going on here? All right, there's Kenrith, the Return King, as you mentioned, and an elite spellbinder. So even though that wasn't perfect, and Pozzo kept it a little close there, those were nice hits. Though I will say, definitely a chance for Hauck to survive this.
I mean, it didn't start off great, and there's no Blade Historian there. You did find Kenrith with the red mana activation, but this could have gone a lot worse here for Hauck.
Curious to see if Hauck can leverage the Selfless Saviors to help mitigate the board and try to come up with some way to survive the following turn. I mean, as it stands, Sebastian's more or less out of gas. Has some spells to cast, but I think all the Winotas are gone now. There might be one left, but no, that should be all of them, right? First one got killed, then cast this one, and then hit 2 of them here. So there's no more Winotas left for Pozzo. So that's Bone Crusher eating the Wolf token, and then Spellbinder getting saved and basically eating, trading the Savior for the Giant. And then maybe you get to keep your Chariot and kill that Chariot too. I wonder if there's any way to get Kenrith off the battlefield. Is that too tall an order here? Because that card's a problem.
Yep.
Now we'll see some Saviors saving the Elite Spellbinder and the Asika's Chariot. Oh, I was wrong. Savior actually stuck around and the Binders traded off. Down to 9 goes Christian Hauck, still facing a pretty devastating board here. Can he find a way out?
Hauck feels Winota. He could end the game on the spot.
Wow, you're right. It's only a 2/2 back here.
Yeah.
For Pozzo.
He's got to peel Winota, or he's got to peel a way to kill the opposing Winota or the opposing Kenrith, something like that. And yet I don't think he's drawn anything of relevance, because I think if he had, he would have made his action by now.
Does feel like that. And, as we're kind of riding along with Sebastián Pozzo, these are the things that are going through his mind. Sure, these aren't things that you can control, so he's not going to put too much into it, but come on, you're a human being, right? You got emotions. You're like, I really would like to pick up this win.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's been enough time, whereas you see Christian start to rope a little bit, that you're probably pretty convinced he hasn't drawn a Winota at this point. And it's another selfless.
He's just really good at peeling the pooch.
That's the 4th one. One player's drawn 4 Selfless Saviors. The other one has seen all 4 Winota. I think I know where I'd like to be there. Asika's Chariot off the top here for Pozzo. So 2 more cats join the fray. And the Chariot's going to get haste here. Wow, that was a nice play there from Pozzo.
Yep. Pozzo, a very, very, very skilled constructed player.
He really is. And here's another turn with 5 Winota triggers. Can't be any way for Hauck to get out of this. There it is, the Blade Historian. We know if Christian had one of those answers, he would have used it, and he's going to scoop him up. Sebastián Pozzo picks up the match 2-0. Yeah, he was the one who found Winota. It's that simple.